first one, and I'll open up the SOE, CPC, and All right, so we'll get started. In the interest of time, I know I have some people who have texted me saying they're still trying to find the location, so even if they file in, that is completely all right. Thank you again for coming out. My name is Lanisha Whittington-Kaminski. You can call me LA or Lanisha, either one is fine. And I am the North Carolina Democracy Campaign for Friends of the Earth and the only democracy campaign in the nation for Friends of the Earth. So definitely honored to be home. I'm a North Carolina native, and it's good to be here and serve people here. And so what we'll do is I'm actually going to have everyone stand up for a quick second. And the mural is still out here, right? Okay, perfect. So I actually want everyone to look at something before we begin. So follow me, and it's just going to be right out here in the hall, so you can file out either doors, either side. Yes. Okay, so this is super long. So we had to place out in the hall. So first I want you to look at, you can gently walk down on either side. Once again, I'm not going to give you the description. Take it in for a minute or two. This mural was actually done by a that range from the West End to try to get together. Try to get this all this week. Crazy, right? Amazing. But I want you to just kind of take it in. And really, I'm going to be specifically say, once you're finished looking at the scenery, the wildlife, I don't want you to see much. I want you to look at the map in the center and look at what is residing within that map. Okay? And really kind of formulate what you think. And like I said, please feel free to walk down. It has definitely stood the test of time. So it's totally durable, not fragile. My car will test that.
Nice.
Is it a deer?
Can't even take it apart.
Thank you. And then backslash. Nope, that's perfect.
I'm scared.
Okay. Thank you for venturing out to the hallway. Okay, so I just want you to have that map, that mural outside. If you are just coming in and have a chance to see the mural outside on the floor, please take the opportunity to go out and look and come back in. So I'll let y'all get settled for a minute, and then we'll proceed. Okay. So the point of this democracy teach-in is to begin to discuss the intersection and the fusion of obviously democracy issues, but more specifically redistricting and gerrymandering intersecting with environmental and how we're seeing impacts in North Carolina and exactly how that correlates to gerrymandering. That they're not two separate issues, but they're actually merged in such a deep and entrenched way that it demands our attention and it demands our movement building, our coalition building, and asking more of our legislators, even though we're already doing that. So what the title of my PowerPoint is kind of, generic is what I call the top of it. Redistricting is the name, gerrymandering is the game. And the reason I say game is because gerrymandering has been treated as a game for a long time, and it is time out. Because our environment is at stake. And what we're saying is green democracy is what we want. So we've heard one of my, and I'm glad to have already here because I'm a huge fan of Democracy North Carolina and their work with Fair Maps. I was able to work with their campaign in developing their redistricting and gerrymandering curriculum last year with some of their fellows and was able to train. And so their Fair Maps, you'll see some twining of Democracy North Carolina in here. Once again, I'm a fan. But instead of Fair Maps, what we're coming from is the perspective of green democracy. This is our environment, and this is us, and how they come together. That's what's at stake, and that's what is the solution. Okay, so please show of hands. So everybody's heard of redistricting, right? So we're not going to get deep into the surface level definition of redistricting, but there are some points that I really want to bring out, and I'm not, if this is going dark, Rodney, do you know how it seems like they're disappearing on me?
I don't know. You stay on once you.
Oh, there we go. All right, awesome. Thank you. Hey, I just had to call on you. Okay, so we already know redistricting is the action of dividing or creating new political areas for voting. This also includes school districts. Okay, so I'm adding really specific things that will be a part of our deep discussion when we're analyzing and looking at Charlotte. Look who we need them to benefit and who needs to draw them. So these are very specific key elements to how our communities of interest, when I say communities of interest, it's who we are of interest to us, where we live, okay, and what is important to us. So most of our political representatives, we already know, they're voted into office and are then afterwards sorted into these established political districts. Now here's the very important thing that I have a sense that we will hear very soon in the next few years when we're already hearing the Supreme Court decisions with our gerrymandering, our partisan, and our racial gerrymandering. We know North Carolina is on the map again, but not for anything positive, right? But it can be historic. It is historic. Hey there. Good to see you. It is historic because we haven't, as a nation, had partisan lawsuit based on gerrymandering before. This is huge. And at the same time, that's amazing. And why I say amazing is because we could begin to talk about policy. What's important about this is, goodness. I'll carry on. So the redistricting is mandated by the U.S. Constitution, but it follows, and here's my sense. You will begin to hear about the census. The census will be the next hot topic. You've probably already heard that, right? And that will be the next policy decision, and I wish this would stay up, is the census is directly what is mandating how we do redistricting. We will come back to this a little bit later in the PowerPoint. Exactly, maybe deep discussions, I hope we'll get into a little bit of the census and how it should be maybe restructured. I don't want to give any suggestions, but that is extremely important, and they are done every 10 years together. You already know, reapportionment, we're here. If you have any questions, please interrupt me. I'm totally open to questions. Okay, so rules to redistricting. This is what we need to know as citizens, especially when it comes time to go for action. And exactly what we need to do is follow these rules in order to present maps or present ideas that our legislation can't rebut against. So when we say, okay, we've taken into account equity, how did we do that? When we take into account our population, how do we do that? These are the actual rules we have to follow in order to produce just but legal maps as well. So first is compact. And over here I did the corresponding number. So number one, compact. A lot of institutions, organizations define compactness very differently. So I try to just make it very black and white. It generally means a district in which people live near each other. So when you look at a map and you see an area, and we'll see maps here in a minute, that are like they have squiggly lines on the outside perimeter, that's not a good idea of compact. Okay, that's not compact at all. Compact, the best compact according to experts, have a smooth finish, either round, perfectly square. They're just actually identifiable shapes. That makes sense, right? Okay, so the next thing is when you're looking at contiguous. Contiguity is the next thing, is where redistricting statute mandates that the lines actually touch. Not corners. That's cheating. You can't do that. The lines actually have to touch on your map. And we will be doing activity where I will be testing your skills with this very item. The lines have to touch. They have to be an unbroken shape. Number three, and I didn't place definitions on all because I feel like some are very kind of self-explanatory. Equal population, I do have that up there, but it's self-explanatory. All districts must have equal population.
Anybody that needs Wi-Fi, it's right here, 514 Sheridan.
Thank you. Okay, preservation of existing political communities. That is a little different than communities of interest. So when you hear these two terms, some persons can use them interchangeably, but they're not the same. Okay? When you're looking at political communities, this refers to not crossing county, city, or town boundaries when drawing districts. This isn't really about, I would say, directly the bodies of us, but where we live within those lines. Okay? When we get to partisan fairness, racial fairness, we're actually going to touch this a little bit deeply, so I won't go into that. I think we have pretty much a good, solid definition of what, we'll get to that. Racial fairness, partisan fairness when it comes to political parties. Finally, I added an asterisk beside preservation of communities of interest because this isn't always mandated by every state. That's the other important thing. North Carolina is not like the other states. There may be some that are similar, but every state has a different code of ethics. So some identify and say you have to preserve communities of interest. Others, it's not an actual law, it's not a rule. Okay, it's a suggestion, not a rule. Any questions on this so far? I know I kind of went through that. Anyway,
Hello, how are you?
good. How are you? Good to see you. Okay. Redistricting, why should we care? We know, hopefully. It affects where we vote. It affects who we get to vote for. The thing is, it affects all of us whether we choose to exercise our right to vote or not. That's the basics. But it's the most important. The next thing, before we get into gerrymandering, is making sure when we are doing the action portion, the deep discussion today on redistricting, is really talking specifically about the granular level. Every state is different, but we're focusing obviously on North Carolina. That's where we are. The officials voted into office, draw their own lines, and I'm going to stay over here because I don't want to move. School districts, the school board members draw their school board districts. The city council members draw their city council lines. The same with county commissioners and the state legislators. Do we see a trend here? What do we think about this? What do we think about what we're observing here? Just popcorn, shoot it out to me. What do we think of?
Self-preservation.
So,
No accountability.
Oh,
I want to pick my voters.
yeah. Yes.
Is there a review board?
See, y'all are already itching me towards the solutions, and we're not even there yet. But I'm loving where you are. Exactly. No accountability. They're picking. They're choosing their voters. There is self-preservation, and where's the accountability? Exactly. This is North Carolina. So redistricting. That is what, just covering that is to make sure that we know that redistricting is legal, it's mandated every 10 years, and even that discussion, and I'm going to leave you with this little nugget as we move on from redistricting is, when you're thinking about the U.S. Census, usually redistricting is based off of the age of voting population, not the total population. So that means that there's a demographic of population that's left out. So think about that when it comes into, okay, 10 years, in 10 years of time, someone would come of age to vote. Someone would need representation within North Carolina in the House of Representatives. So how exactly does that work? I'm just going to leave that there. So that's the U.S. Census we're talking about. So I'm just going to leave that, drop the mic, keep going. Introduction to gerrymandering. I love history, and maybe you've all already heard this, so I like to kind of give a little bit of realism and a little bit of punniness. So the gerrymandering monster, it wasn't pronounced Jerry, it was pronounced Gary. And it was because it was spelled and coined after the governor, Elbridge Gerry. Because gerrymandering actually used to be a joke, right? And so the Boston Gazette named it after him in 1812. This is nothing new. But at least it used to be a little bit of a joke, and I guess this was before they had social media and actual connection with people, that this was a joke. But this is what it was in Massachusetts because he signed a bill to redistrict in favor of his party. And it was said to have resembled a mythological salamander. Now the reason I also use this is because we will be taking a look at the old map here in North Carolina, and Charlotte specifically, and we already know that Congressional District 12 looked like what? A snake. Yes, an updated 2.0 version of the mythological salamander, which is an interesting, history repeats itself. So, what is gerrymandering? Here we go with gerrymandering. This will still be brief because I want to make sure that we're getting to the deep discussion because I think that's the most intricate part of today. To kind of preface a little bit, Reverend Glency will actually be leading the deep discussion with me, just kind of facilitating here to ask questions because it will be all about, yes, teamwork, but also how many ways can you come up with gerrymandering or actually redistricting solutions. That's the next part. So we're trying to come up with solutions, and I'll tell you why shortly. Gerrymandering is the act of drawing district lines to give specific party more power than the other. It's a manipulation. Okay? You draw lines to change, maintain, or move power. Once again, like what Kurt said, it is self-preservation for the most part. Most major parties have been guilty voters lose out because we are usually never involved in the process. Now, are we? No. I mean, unless someone can tell me that they've had a town hall meeting with their legislators that, you know, they go over the maps with you, show you the software, and teach you how to use it. I mean, I would love to hear if that is an actual thing. I need to be there. Okay? All right. Hey, how are you? Welcome. So here's the thing. Even though it is considered a deliberate attempt to control voting and who's elected, it's not illegal. That's the thing. There's only one part of gerrymandering that's illegal, and that is if it is directly on discrimination based on the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If you can get away, let me just put it that way, if you can get away with not being obvious, it's not illegal.
So it's not illegal to do it on partisan?
It's totally not. No. Isn't that interesting? But that's what makes North Carolina right now so groundbreaking, even though it's horrific, is because having a lawsuit based on partisan changes the discussion. That why is it not illegal? Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because it's like, what? Some people are like, wait a minute, it should be, no, it's just unfair. Okay, so do we have sound before I play this? Okay, sweet. I am an experiential learner, so I have to see, do, and hear. So this is for people who, you know, let's see. Yeah, okay, let's see if I can do it. And if anyone has any recommendations. If I need to go to YouTube, then I'm okay with that. Oh, let's see if I can go over here and... We may have to come back to it. I do want us to see this, and the reason I want... It's only 60 seconds. It's very brief. But this is a national platform. And what stood out to me is that North Carolina was so egregious with its gerrymandering that this national organization added North Carolina as the example of what not to be. That's why I wanted to show it. So we'll come back to that because I definitely want you to see it. Is it fair? And they
Are you connected to Wi-Fi with that?
That's a really good question. And no, I'm not. You see? That's
Ups and
okay.
yes.
Ups and yes. Thank you. And then 51. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay. Beautiful. All right. So let's see. You see my many tabs, don't judge me.
Whenever elections happen, people start talking about gerrymandering. No, not him. Gerrymandering is when one party redraws district borders in order to win more than the opposition. Take State X, for example. It has 5 districts, 2 political parties, and an elected official for each district. Here's what the districts look like before, and here's what they look like after they were gerrymandered. Same number of voters, completely different outcomes. All of this is done so the party doing the redistricting can win more seats, and this leads to unequal representation. Now here's what that really looks like. Yep, those are Want more? Download the AJ Plus mobile app and join the conversation. Available in your app store now.
And that's their plug, I guess, for today.
Whenever.
Yes. So as you can see, very brief, but I thought it was very to the point. And those maps that they were showing, hey there, Carol. The maps that they were showing, we will actually see those in a different form without the labels, and we're going to kind of work together to see if we can identify gerrymanders. When I say identify gerrymanders, there are different types. We hear just gerrymandering, right? So show of hands if you have heard of cracking and packing. Sweet. Okay, all right, so these are the first two gerrymandering. These two directly affect, it's speaking about us, the citizens. It's what they can do to us, and it's what has been done. So what you just saw, that Charlotte Congressional 12, and that was the old map, and when I say old, that was 2016, that he said, so let's not be old, let's say just the previous map. They cracked and packed us. A&T University, and actually let me hold on that thought. So cracking is spreading voters of one type or one party over many districts, okay? It's identifying. So if I saw y'all, obviously, this is one room, should be one whole district, but I want my bestie to win over here. I want my best friend to win. So I'm gonna section you off, and you're District 1. I'm gonna crack you off District 2, and y'all far over there, District 7 for no reason, okay? So it's that cracking element. This will cause the voters of that party party become minorities in their district. I just diluted your power. I took it. You do not have power numbers. Your every vote matters. Right now, it's diluted. Let's go next. Okay, so there was a picture there that I wish you could have seen, but here we go. It didn't say. So the picture that I had there was actually just me, so you do see me, so hey, you're not missing anything. And it was me standing in the middle of A&T University. And one leg was in a district, and the other leg was in a different district. Yeah, I was just standing right here, and literally this leg had to go vote over there. Okay, and so what that was is they, in Greensboro, North Carolina, as you know, the student body there at A&T and at the college, Meredith College for women, they are amazing. They are active, they are organized, and they do their thing in Greensboro. However, if it isn't in favor, well, it wasn't in favor of the candidate, the party saw that we needed to dilute their power. So they literally cracked the campus in half. It dilutes their power. The students who were coming in, the freshmen, the sophomore who hadn't previously voted, that were just now registered, show up to the polls and think they're in this district and they're not. The people that they thought they were voting for are no longer on their ballot. A mess. When I was doing Teachers for Democracy in North Carolina, I trained a group of really amazing leaders at A&T on this stuff right here. And now they're leading the fight. And they're calling their own, not just student body, but their administrators to task to say, can we have more exposure? So when you Google A&T University, because they're in the trenches now fighting. Okay, packing. So we got cracking, cracked apart. It's pretty self-explanatory when I went into it. Packing is the action of placing as many voters in a single district. Okay? This minimizes the number of elections they can influence. So once again, it's still identifying. So back in the day, there wasn't map drawing software. There is now. All we need is a computer and the software, and you can literally type in the exact parameters of what you're looking for. That is party, that is race, that is demographic, it is rural, or I can be very specific, and the map will give me exactly what I want. It's very purposeful, it's very designed. It's a computer, it does it for me. And so to be a little bit more specific, Charlotte District 12 was cracked in areas, but for the major part, it was packed. It packed certain voters all the way, you already know, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, all the way down to Charlotte. That means they identified who they wanted that lived on that line. They identified them, and by the interviews, they said they were not going for race. They were only going for partisan. So they admitted to saying, we definitely partisan gerrymandered, just not race. Just ignore that part, which is interesting discussion, but that's also what's in the lawsuit that's in right now, or has been. And so when you're looking at that, packing is placing all of you because you only get a limited amount of representation. So your vote in the grand scheme of the state does what? How much weight does it have? And also, should Winston-Salem's representative be the same person in Charlotte? Do y'all have the same needs, communities of interest? It's just common sense, but that's not what we're battling here. So of course I place it here for us to be able just to see and take in the realness and the reality of this previous map, okay? And of course we're seeing High Point, Winston-Salem, down to Charlotte. Awesome. And it's states here, predominantly African-American residents, and who vote for Democrats. So you've seen partisan and the racial gerrymanders come out. Okay, any questions about packing and cracking? The last two, and I won't spend much time on this, and this is why when the census discussion comes up, this will be the next discussion that nobody really, I don't want to say nobody, I think there are a lot of scholars who do amazing work around this and some community organizers, but the media doesn't really talk much about hijacking and kidnapping. Why? Is because this is another attempt to dilute your vote, but it directly cuts out the power of the official, the incumbent, the new candidate. This is all about them, not about us, but it is. So here we go. Kidnapping is moving a popular incumbent candidate out of his or her base district into a new, unfamiliar district with the opposing party. You know what happens if they're your fan, you love them, you think you're going to vote for them at the primaries, at the GE, and they're not there, they're in a new district where no one knows them, are they going to win? No. That's kidnapping. They literally kidnap this incumbent, won't be known, and as I said already before, the reliable voters' base is in turn kidnapped from their favorite incumbent. So both parties lose. Okay, and I don't mean political parties, I mean us as individuals. I'll let y'all. Okay, so this is just an example, just because I don't want to go too deep into North Carolina legislator name calling. That's not my goal here today. It's to kind of encourage you to look in the right direction, to know and to connect these dots. But this is in New York. This was a couple of years ago. This was an up-and-coming favorite candidate, Congressman Jeffries. He's been on the news. Stephen Colbert, he's been on everywhere. He was kidnapped from his home district, and I'm about to show you the map, okay? It's mind-blowing for me, okay? He was a former, and he was done by a former incumbent. Now, here's the thing. Both of them were the same party. Both of them were in the same party. It is about preserving power. So that's the other thing I want to make sure that we're talking about. This is not, let's be nonpartisan, because this was party on party. Okay? It's happened on both sides of the aisle. They were taken by surprise. The voters were when his name was no longer on the ballot. He lost that race. Don't worry, a few years later, the gentleman who did do this was found guilty for something else, and he is now congressman. So it worked out. Just want y'all to give the, the happy ending, not just a happy ending. And I'll show you his house in a minute. Hijacking is the action of drawing a district to contain two or more incumbents from the same party. So it's just me identifying and saying, I'm tired of them having this much power, so let's just cut them into the same district. They can battle each other. One's going to lose, and yay, we're going to have to deal with one of them. That's hijacking. Okay? Any questions on kidnapping and hijacking? I know, like I said, I want to be very brief on this, but I at least want to make you aware that when it's coming up and you're hearing these terms, it still applies to us and how our votes are diluted. Let's see. This is literally the house. This is an animation of the house of Congressman Jeffries cut out by exactly one block. He was here, and now he's not. He was literally etched out by one block. They touched nothing else, and they placed him into the district below. Once again, partisan, completely legal.
Do you know where this was in New York?
I did, and I can give that, because my brain's full, I'll give that back to you, Kurt.
And are you restricted in New York to running in the district where you live?
I believe so. I don't want to speak out for New York.
Because you're not in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, he's exactly. But New York, I think it was different because he was already in the race, and he didn't find out until he got to the ballot. Thank you for saying that. So everybody found out the day of elections, and so there's an interview that I usually play, but it's kind of long. And at the end, he says, "New York politics is pretty rough, but this move was straight gangster." That was his exact quote. So yeah, they found out the day. Okay, activity time. Here we go. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to actually hand out sheets. Let me see, time-wise. And, really, Lindsay, if you don't mind, because I'm looking at 2:30. She just walked out. Okay, then I'll have a few more minutes and I'll ask her. So I'm going to start here and you'll pass these down. So this activity is a very... Pretty much, it can be a brief activity. You have a pen or pencil. If you don't, we'll locate one and bring it to you. Doesn't matter. It's your paper. What it is first, while you're handing these out, I'm going to actually ask everybody to look up here at these squares. So you saw that in that brief video, correct? So this is the example, except you have to, as an individual, as a group, that's up to you, figure out, are these examples of cracking, packing, or both? That's your question, okay? This activity here will come second, because once we get these answers, you'll know exactly how to do this activity. Okay, so as you have your paper, take a minute, look up here at your map, and let's look at the first one. So the first one has no lines, so it is just showing you the playing ground of who lived where. Okay, 60% blue, 40% red. We're just seeing those people. That's just how that's the community. Great. Now let's see how they were divided. Now the second one right here, we see with the thick dividers, thick black lines, this is how they were divided into districts. And we already see at the end that blue wins. Blue has the advantage. So is this an example of cracking or packing? Okay. Now, if I could ask a courageous soul to tell me why you think it's packing. What is packing? Yes?
It's because they put as many blue
But did they also crack the red though?
So here's one way to look at it. You're both correct. Let's say that they did pack all the blue in. That's how they won, right? But here's the question. Did they have to do anything really crazy, egregious line drawing to pack the blue? Not really. And who lost? The red, right? So what you'll do is choose to go with who they impacted. So even though you're right, go with the impacted, which means they weren't cracked, because that's who lost. Does that make, it's weird how it's tricky like that. You can look at both, and that's why it gets tricky for us if we're not doing this actively. It is packed and cracked. Cracked would be the choice. Okay, next one.
And that's based on impact.
Yep, base that on impact.
Lovely Facebook.
What do you say?
Lovely Facebook.
Oh, thanks. I don't know how to get the notifications off, so I see there's no veggie platter, but I do have. I know I see X, but it will literally pop up 5 times. So there's no veggie platter, but we do have vegetarian options, so no worries. No worries. I plan to back up. Okay, so let's see exactly who thinks this is packing, cracking, or the options both. What do you think out of those 3?
What was the last one?
Yeah, the last one. Yeah, no, it's not so bad. The very last one, the interesting drawing black lines, and it looks like they're touching, so they're contiguous. It looks like they kept things together, right? But what is it? It's cracking, packing, or both. What do you think? And that's interesting, isn't it? And so you're starting to see a little bit of a glimpse of how they came with those congressional districts. All right, any guesses? Both. Yes, it's exactly both. And so then it comes into, okay, why both? How both? It is because there is a very extreme example of how they strategically had to draw lines. You see all those crazy shapes, right? Can we really look at that and say, okay, where's the rectangle? It looks like Tetris. It looks like a game of Tetris. Right. And so that's how we see both the packing and the cracking. And so the red wins here. And so they packed the blue in as much as they could, right? So they were packed in only 2. And in the red, they cracked off as much as they could to make sure that they still were stretched over 3. Yep. Isn't that? It's wild. Okay, so take your sheets of paper, and we're just going to take a few minutes, and then we'll freeze here the PowerPoint and go into more of a discussion part once Reverend Lindsay comes back. And so the discussion part will come, and I'll let her kind of speak about it a bit more. This worksheet, you are going to please fill out complete as many squares as you possibly can. These are districts. Each square is a district. And you are trying to draw as many different versions of districts as you can with 4 parts. So you need 4 districts in a square. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And the lines have to touch. Remember, you have to follow at least that one rule. The others, we don't worry about the rest. Okay, we don't care about the rest of the rules right now. I just need the lines to touch, no corners, because I could maybe use this when it comes time to pass this. Okay, but if you do too much, it'll look kind of funny. So try it. Make sure all lines touch, and it can't be the corners. It literally has to be all the lines, and we'll do kind of like a time. And
So it has to be 4 districts.
yes. Divide the grids into 4 equal contiguous districts in as many different ways as possible, so you can get creative.
Are you supposed to have like about the same number of each color in each district, or does
I love the questions. It's, you know.
You're trying to be fair.
Yeah. Right. All right, we'll do 1 more minute. Maybe a little less, we'll see. How's everyone doing? All right, and time. Okay, raise your hand for me so we don't have to yell out. How many completed one district? Right, okay, how many completed all? Okay, how many got up to 3, at least half a page? Okay, y'all are being really fair. That's. Y'all are being really fair. Some people I have feel that, and that also tells me about when we're going to our deep discussion, a little bit more about what we'll be discussing. Some people actually come into the maps and they think no barriers, no lines. I just have to get 4 equal parts to touch. They don't think about anything. They don't think about the colored dots. They don't think about the see-through dots. They don't think about anything. They just go for it. They gun it, right? And that's not a problem. That helps with perspective and actually showing the different ways we can draw it. But do I have any volunteers who would be willing to show their example? Anyone who's willing? Okay, thank you. Hey, okay, wonderful. All right, so I'm going to hold this up here, and so you see that there's like a perfect cross into 4 even sections, right? You see that. Welcome, Jay. So you see what they're doing. Be here. The second one is a little different, but still completed the mission. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's excellent. Excellent. Oh, look at you. What? He even got equal population. I didn't even ask him.
That's what I was
Well, here's the interesting thing. It's just only matching lines. No other rules for right now. Yeah, no other rules. Isn't that it?
I did that myself.
Yes.
I did that.
Oh, really? Can I see
Now,
you?
that split some of the circles, but it still would have been equal.
See, that is amazing. That is, but that is that actually, we don't split people in half, but we do split communities. So that's perfect. See that? And that's why this exercise kind of begins to tell us the identified ways in which, yes, computer software can draw stuff, but that right there and this right here, this is what redistricting.
Have there been instances where they've split households?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow.
And well, that's really what you're looking at when you see Congressman Jeffries. They technically split him from his neighborhood. I mean, that can be looked at that way. Now, I would have to say, before I say split a house in half, I'd have to do a little bit more research on that. I wouldn't be surprised, only because they've been bold enough to take one house. And actually, to come back, it just came to me, Zach Galifianakis, the actor, he's from North Carolina, and he did a documentary here, and he did speak with an elected official whose land by a corner was literally just cut out and the rest of the land was maintained. So yes, yes. Okay, nice. Y'all were coming up with some. This is exactly what I wanted. And we will have time. This is perfect. We'll have really almost 40 minutes for discussion. So this right here is your North Carolina. This is not current. This is the old map. But I want you to see what we were just discussing. So compactness. Remember, an example of a good compact district area. Does it look like this? No, because you see all those jagged little crooks. That's what I was talking about. When they're teethy, they're like teeth. That's not compact at all. That's somewhere cracked. That's somewhere packed, and probably kidnapping, hijacking, and I'm gonna get you some of the terms as I catch you up. But how about the bottom? Looks a little bit more mural-esque, doesn't it? A little bit more of a pretty picture of North Carolina. You can actually identify shapes. Looks like communities are together politically. It looks like communities of interest are actually together because we can begin to see our actual state, our counties, our cities. That's the whole point. We don't really, that's compactness. Now, I came back to this so everyone can see this. The reason I did it twice is because when I go back to this map that you just came from, yes. Oh, really?
Because I was stuck on one thing you said was preserving political lines, like not crossing county. So I'm not understanding how District 12 can even exist, considering you're going across what's like Bears, Mecklenburg,
Guilford.
Well, it does exist more. Now it's just Mecklenburg.
All that's just Mecklenburg? Oh,
The new District 12 is just Mecklenburg.
Well,
No.
not the old District 12. It did.
No, the new District 12.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, the new, yes. The old one, I get what you're saying. So here's the other thing. This is where I would say go back, you're asking the correct questions. Looking at our U.S. Constitution. Now, we are familiar with, can we vote in a ballot change to change the Constitution? No, we can't do a ballot initiative at all. That's what makes North Carolina politics so tricky. We can't galvanize a group of us to say, okay, we're just going to put it on the ballot and vote for it. We can't. It's almost like a rigged game, isn't it? And so in our U.S. Constitution will be those fine details of what these rules right here. Some states are they are very specific with you have to follow. What is considered traditional rules that you would see in the Constitution for us, like when you're looking at the North Carolina, because the U.S. Constitution actually doesn't give rules. It just says redistricting. Oh, that's another thing. U.S. Constitution does not say this. Our state constitutions tell us how, the how part. So the North Carolina Constitution, traditional, what we consider traditional, that we have to follow is compact and contiguous. Compact, you already know. Smooth lines, doesn't really matter about a district. It is your question, and that's a perfect question. When the lines are touching, still doesn't matter, does it? They follow the rules. Other than that, the rest is kind of open to interpretation if it's not in the North Carolina Constitution. We begin to see more of a picture, right? Okay, do we see this here? Do we see those rules? Sweet, y'all are reading maps. That was my goal. That's my goal. So when you're looking at these new maps that are coming out, you should be able to look at the proposed maps and say, okay, this doesn't look compact. What is this? This doesn't look like it's contributed. Or maybe it is. Maybe you're saying, yeah, this is right. It doesn't look like equal population. These are the questions I want you to begin. And if you're interested in this PowerPoint, and for the sake of trees, because I already did enough today, I will totally email it to you so you can have it. But this is the next portion that I said we're going to get to it. And this is before, like I said, deep discussion, because we'll have 45 minutes to do deep discussion before we get to eat and just fellowship. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, extremely important, because this is actually what you need to identify, and this all goes back into, before we get to the slide of how it's impacting the environment. All this is leading up to how we've seen these bills come into place that we're looking at, whether it's the farm bills that we'll talk briefly about. I won't go deep into legislation pieces, but I will point you in the direction to say, follow the yellow brick road. Okay? Voting Rights Act of 1965. This is what made this portion illegal of gerrymandering. Remember, partisan isn't illegal yet. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Racial is. It's because this landmark piece of federal legislation in the U.S. prohibits racial discrimination in voting, because we already know what's happening in the civil rights movement. It was everything from not being able to vote the ballots, it was all voter discrimination. This was finally a piece that was placed in so that persons of color had full voting power, a weight in each vote. Okay? Now here's the thing though. In 2013, and I'm smiling because I can't believe this was a thing, and it happened, but it did. The Supreme Court struck down a key component of the Voting Rights Act. And because they struck down one section, and if you want to look up that section, it's 4A, it automatically made another section, 5, void. What this is, and I won't go deep into it, the 4 was stating that the federal level, the Department of Justice, no longer had to approve or oversee the decisions of the state. A state can now be autonomous because somehow race relations have progressed that much. I didn't say that very cynically.
We know that wrong.
Yeah, I said it very cynically. And why I say that very cynically is because history obviously has proven it, and it's proven again. The impact was immediate. 2 hours after that decision, Texas made the public announcement that it would move forward with its redistricting plans and voter ID law, which had previously at Texas been completely kicked out because it was just it was crazy. It was just too flagrant. But because of this, they put it right back in. Now, how does that relate to us? Well, 3 weeks later, North Carolina followed suit.
I think we actually they went in process with 48 hours after.
You're pretty right.
Yeah.
You're very, yes. I would say the media hit 3 weeks later, but we were there with Texas. Let's just be transparent. And it's a foreshadow of what was to come, because guess what? 2016, 6 elections later, federal judges find 28 North Carolina districts unconstitutional for racial gerrymandering. Timeline begins to look a little familiar, right? We're seeing this happening, the fighting, 2013, we're seeing all this stack up. It all relates. And guilty of partisan gerrymandering. That's very dramatic because it's a big deal. I'm going to say that again. Story. I want you to see the numbers. This is one of the last slides for this portion before we started talking about Enviro. These are the numbers. They're very close. North Carolina is very close, which is what makes us such a battleground, aside from other reasons. We're a battleground state. But still, we have 2.6 Democrat, 2.0 unaffiliated and odd, Republican 2.055. So even, you see, it's a slight, I mean, it's very slight between unaffiliated Republican and Democrats the most. Let's look at the House. You have 46 compared to 73. When you saw that AJ Plus video that I showed and they were showing a caricature and animation, this is real life. That's what that would look like. That's what the people would look like. This is what the numbers look like. Senate, Democrat 15, Republican 35. You see the numbers. Like I said, this is all about nonpartisan because let's be real, both parties are guilty of this. This is just where we are now. So I'm not basing off the parties. I'm just showing you an example. So let's begin to go back to, yes. Let's talk about the mural. And if you didn't get to see the mural that was out on the hallway, it looks like it was just a abandoned painting. It isn't. It's very long. Please step outside and look at the painting, the mural. It is actually a mural that was done, and I'll hold it up so everybody can see it. A collage of artists from across North Carolina came together in 2 weeks and did it. They had this concept of North Carolina that fit our concept. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Britain actually came up with the idea. So thank you. And they came together, and so before I give you a synopsis, what did you see in the map?
I saw a lot of gray throughout the western portion, and the only real green was, I guess you would consider that the Piedmont area.
Yes. And
there was red cracks. I noticed one I thought was District 12 that came right down throughout the state.
very nice, very nice. And the green was painted specifically green for a reason, because we're hoping that we can get back to a green democracy. But what was that area? Anybody identify it? It is the route of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline.
Wow.
Yes. Now here's the other interesting thing. That route, the proposed route, I say proposed because it's not a done deal yet, and we're fighting, so it isn't yet. That proposed pipeline that is going through those districts, that same district was District 7, excuse me, not 12, District 7, in the previous unconstitutional map. Does that sound kind of peculiar? But that's the same identical district, same area. The top part of the ACP in Northampton, District 1, was the district along with District 12 that was found to be discriminatory. Yes.
So what we're saying is that we're found unconstitutional because they were racially biased districts. So we've got the race title, right?
Am I saying that?
And is it tapped that way because it's primarily African American and Indigenous American communities?
Yes. So we, and I have other experts in the room. Good to see you, Louise. So being that I have other experts, I'll be calling on y'all and asking. So with the ACP, Atlantic Coast Pipeline, this route was proposed and it's moved 3 times, right? The first time we know it was where? Where was the first proposed route? It was near,
North of Durham. Is it Wake County?
yes, it was near Wake County. So it's near, well, what do you think? Why didn't it stay there? Because the shortest line to get from Virginia through North Carolina on down would be the first proposed map. But why did they change it?
Wealthy white districts.
Money speaks. Money speaks. Money. Money, big money. But also, our decision makers are also in Wake County. If they want a pipeline in the back door, there's a lot going on in Wake, right? There's a lot going on in Wake. That was the first. It has moved, and this is the 3rd time. And 7 out of those 8 districts are actually the most populated persons of color districts in the entire state.
We know where they put toxic factors and everything else.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I'm about to show you a map. So, of course, yes, Rodney. Indigenous all the way through Robinson, all the way to Garysburg, Northampton. And in Northampton, we already know that they are unfortunately #1 in the state for lung and bronchial cancer due to pollution. This is where that route is going. The same districts. I'm going to show you a map that I got from Waterkeeper Alliance. Does this map look familiar to the blue that I showed you and asked you questions on? Is it compact? Is it contiguous? Does it kind of look similar? Of course it's North Carolina. Of course it looks similar. But I mean the dots on the inside. This is an amazing website. If you have not visited this website, it literally shows you the exact area of poultry corporations, hog farms. Yes, it shows the landfills. This is what these colored dots are. And they are hyperlinks. It'll actually tell you the county, the amount within the area. This is an amazing website. I'm giving them a shout out. So Waterkeeper Alliance did this work, so I'm giving them the credit. Look at district, like I already said, look at District 7. Formally, this is not the same area. Look at District 1. It's not the same area. All those, and I'll go back to the other map so we can see it. Let me see if I have it. Oh, look, right there. Do you see here? Look at that. Going back. Do you see that? So then we ask the question, is democracy and the environment far removed? Now I know I'm trying to connect the dots. And when I say trying, I'm trying to steer us into the direction because this research is not just, we're looking visibly, yes. But to get a little bit more granular, Farm Bill, and like I said, I want y'all just to look it up and I'll give it a shout out. Farm Bill 466. That's my non-FOE hat. When you're looking at that Farm Bill, you
467.
Yes. This is a bill that was placed into, and I will not say the legislator's name. However, this bill was placed into, obviously, the House to stop the ability of impacted citizens from being able to bring lawsuits, and it was a cap of how much they could receive. And it was only based on their amount of their house. And if you rent a home, which if we're at risk, impoverished, you don't get anything because you rent. Fortunately, the lawsuit that the plaintiffs did win recently against Duke Energy, it came before this bill. They tried to make this bill retroactive. They couldn't. So the plaintiffs were awarded. But any lawsuits after this, this bill will be the guiding line.
What's the website?
Oh, a Farm Bill, yeah, 467. And if you just go on the North Carolina General Assembly website or Google.
You Google it.
Farm Bill 467. Yep, Farm Bill 467. And there are more. There's Farm Bill 711. There's a couple that are coming out that we're hearing. There's a Senate bill. But here's the thing to get back to Farm Bill 467. The same people, that's I'm leaving it ambiguous for your research, that brought this Farm Bill are actually the same people that were on the original redistricting in 2011 for these maps. And they are also on the Redistricting Reform Committee currently to do the new maps. As I said, I don't mind sharing my research after this. If you want emails, I'm totally okay with that. Yes.
We're tying in race, and obviously it's it's the same people making the decisions. We haven't really talked about the census yet,
Yes.
but the demographics raised from the census are what they're basing these on. And what about economic demographics? I'm sure this is being tied in as well, correct?
Thank you for. We actually this is my family over here in the corner. They're my supporters. Love y'all. So we were actually just had this full discussion, what you just said, Kurt, about the U.S. Census just last night. Yes, not to go too deep into it. Yes, and the U.S. Census is exactly where redistricting information for population movement, tracking that movement, is only from the census. That's the only way we have it. So then it does come and beg the question. When it comes to economics, when it comes to household size, when it comes to ethnicity, racial background, and even as you probably heard, the census, there has been a suggestion, and Friends of the Earth, the Democracy campaign side, we signed on to a national committee letter to go to the committee hearing board to ask for a committee hearing to challenge the new 2020 census question of citizenship. So we have signed on to that to ask and to challenge them to say, you have to explain this to us. you have to provide us the research that shows us the impact, whether it be negative or positive, that we haven't seen. And so, yes, the census provides everything for redistricting. They can't be. So redistricting, to briefly, we can begin to also see we have to solve this because it is one symptom of still yet another piece. Another discussion. That was a perfect segue. Okay, so that's it for the PowerPoint because I want to make sure that number one, Artie has, you have to go by 4, and then also Michelle, I want y'all to introduce yourselves. They are going to give you updates about exactly what their work is, what they're doing, how we can get involved before we come back in and do the deep discussion piece that will begin to be about purely Charlotte and what we're looking at. Okay, Artie, would you like, I can say if you go by 4, so I'll give the floor to you. Yeah. And if you want to come up, because there's a camera here, I'll straight out with you. And a microphone.
Thanks, y'all. And thanks to Britton in LA. LA mentioned this, but she worked with us at Democracy North Carolina for a while on our gerrymandering work. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on like who we are, or like an introduction on who we are, what we do, and then tell you what we're working on right now. For those who don't know, Democracy North Carolina is a 25-year-old organization. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Our founder, Bob Hall, worked with SNCC and then helped co-found an organization called the Institute for Southern Studies. From that organization, we have Democracy South, where Bob was doing a lot of work on research around campaign financing, starting with Jesse Helms. That work propelled our work into Democracy North Carolina, where we work on issues like campaign finance reform and gerrymandering and anything that's going to either open up the process to people who've been traditionally disenfranchised or be a watchdog for people who are trying to close the process. So for that, that means that we've been doing things like we helped start same-day registration in the state. We helped start early voting, including Sunday voting, which is really important. We have been doing a lot of campaign finance research. We've been doing a lot of, we helped start 16 and 17-year-old pre-registration, public financing for judicial elections. We want public financing for all elections. We've been doing, obviously right